The desert wind hit my face like a warm slap the moment I stepped off my horse. The sky was still dark, but a thin line of orange light was stretching across the horizon, waking up the dust of the Wild West little by little. Everything was quiet. Too quiet for a morning when a train should have blown its whistle loud enough to shake the whole valley. But the whistle never came, and that's why I was there. My name is Detective Arthur Hale, and I welcome you to the evidence room. That's right, you and I are about to solve a mystery that shook the West in a way no outlaw ever had. Before we begin, do me a favor, subscribe to the channel, leave a like on this video, it helps me bring you more investigations just like this one. Now, let's look at the crime scene. The Silver Arrow, the fastest mail and cargo train in the region, should have arrived at Redwood Station right before sunrise. Instead, I found it standing dead on the tracks like a wounded animal. Its steam was fading, its doors were open, and one of the guards was lying face down in the dirt. I walked closer, slow and careful. My boots crunched over the gravel. A buzzard circled above, an omen nobody liked around here. The guard's name was William Marsh. I knew him a little. Quiet man, but brave enough to pull his gun when needed. Now, he wasn't moving. He had a single bullet wound on his back, right between the shoulder blades. A clean shot. Too clean. Someone knew exactly what they were doing. Sheriff Coleman, a big man with a thick beard and tired eyes, jogged up behind me. "Morning, Hale," he said, breathing hard. "Hell of a mess, isn't it?" "Tell me exactly what happened," I said. The sheriff scratched his head. "Well, nobody knows. Folks in town say they heard a gunshot round 3 in the morning. Others say they heard a whistle that sounded wrong." "Wrong how?" Coleman shook his head. "Like it was echoing from a cave. Even though there ain't no cave anywhere near here. Atmospheric. Creepy. Classic rumor building. But nothing supernatural. Not on my watch." I knelt and checked the guard's hand. Cold. Stiff. Time of death matched the townsfolk's stories. Then something caught my eye. On the side of the cargo car, smeared across the dusty metal, someone had drawn a strange symbol. A circle with a line through it, like an eye. "Sheriff, did your men draw this?" Coleman raised his hands. "No, sir. That was already here when we found the train. Folks say it's a bad omen. A mark used by cut him off. Let me guess. Some outlaw ghost or prairie demon." He nodded nervously. "People are whispering about the last rider." The name made my stomach tighten just a bit. The last rider was a legend around the Wild West, a ghost gunslinger who appeared only on nights when someone was destined to die. No face, no voice, only his black hat and the sound of a single, lonely gunshot. Ridiculous, of course, but legends grow where fear grows. I touched the symbol with my finger. Fresh, still smudgy, drawn within the last few hours. Meaning the killer left it on purpose. A warning? A taunt? A signature? I didn't know yet, but I would. I moved along the train and stepped inside the cargo car. The metal floor was scratched, like there had been a fight. A few wooden crates were cracked open. The crate that mattered most was empty. I recognized it instantly. The government seal, the reinforced lock. This crate had carried 12 silver bars from the coast, a shipment meant for the bank in Redwood. Gone. All of it. "Sheriff," I said, "who knew this shipment was coming today?" Coleman looked down. "Only me, the station master, and William here." I narrowed my eyes. "And who else?" He hesitated. "Well, the whole town knew the train would pass, but not what it was carrying." "Somebody knew, or guessed, or planned this for months," the sheriff sighed. "That's what scares me." I scanned the interior. Bullet mark on the wall. Footprints. Dust kicked everywhere. But then, something odd. A rope. Thick, strong, coated in some kind of dark residue. I picked it up. Smelled it. Not oil. Not gunpowder. Burned. Metal? That made no sense. Rope doesn't burn metal. Unless? No, not yet. Too early to jump to conclusions. But I pocketed it anyway. The engineer, a man named Clarence Porter, sat on a crate outside the train, shaking like he'd seen the devil over his shoulder. "Clarence, you suavemente. Tell me what you remember." He rubbed his hands together. I heard horses, sir," he said. "Lots of horses. Maybe 4 or 5. Horses. but there were no hoofprints around the train. None. Zero. Are you sure? I asked. Positive, he said. They were running fast. I heard the hooves bouncing off the ground. And then I saw him. Who? Clarence swallowed. The last rider. I looked at him calmly. What did you really see, Clarence? A figure, on top of the train, black coat, black hat, standing still as stone. And then, he fired a shot. Only one. He shook harder. And then he vanished. I swear he just disappeared into the dark. A trick. A stunt. A performer with perfect timing? Possibly. But I knew one thing. Nobody disappears without leaving something behind. And that was when I noticed the glitter, small flecks, on the coupler between the cars. I touched one. It stuck to my finger like tiny shards. Glass? No, not glass. Reflective metal. From a broken lantern? From a signal tool? It was too early to say, but the hairs on my neck stood up. Someone had rehearsed this crime like a show. With symbols. With illusions. With timing. With atmosphere. Someone who wanted the world to believe the last rider had returned to claim another soul. But this wasn't a ghost. This was a human hand. A clever one. And I intended to find it. I stepped out into the rising sun and addressed you, the one accompanying me through this investigation. You and I are going to solve this, I said quietly. Every track, every shadow, every rumor, all of it means something. Don't blink. Every clue will count. Then, before mounting my horse to ride into town, Acrocenti, if you're enjoying this investigation, hit that like button and subscribe. We're just getting started. And with that, I rode straight toward Redwood, where the truth and the last gunshot were waiting. Redwood was awake long before the sun finally climbed over the mountains. As I rode into town, every door was slightly open, and every window had a pair of worried eyes staring through it. The news of the stopped train had reached the saloon faster than smoke from a campfire. Whisper by whisper, fear had spread across the street like spilled whiskey. I headed straight for the station office, the heart of Redwood's railroad operations. A small wooden building, paint peeling off the sides, with a big iron bell hanging above the door. I had been there many times before, but that morning, something felt different. The silence. The kind of silence a town only has when people are too scared to breathe. I dismounted my horse and pushed the door open. The station master, Mr. Oswald Turner, was pacing back and forth inside like a trapped coyote. He was a short man with round glasses and a nervous mustache that twitched every time he heard footsteps. When he saw me, he froze. Detective Hale, thank heavens you're here. What do you know, Turner? I asked. He wrung his hands. I told the sheriff everything, but maybe I should tell you again. The train should have arrived at 5:15 sharp. It never misses a minute. But the telegraph stopped responding during the night. No signals, no whistles, nothing. He paused. And then, I saw the symbol. I raised an eyebrow. What symbol? Turner pointed behind him, toward the back door. I followed him outside to the cargo yard, and there it was, painted on the wall of the warehouse. The same symbol from the train, the circle with a single line through it like an eye watching us. Did you draw it yourself? I asked. He shook his head fast, terrified. No, sir. It wasn't here when I locked up last night. I leaned closer to inspect it. Fresh paint. Still damp in some spots. Drawn with precision. Someone had made sure the whole town would see it at first light. This symbol means something, Turner whispered. The townsfolk say it's the mark of the last rider. I stayed quiet. Not because I believed the tale, but because whoever painted that mark wanted us to. Fear is a powerful tool, especially in a place where legends grow louder than truth. I questioned Turner a bit more. Who knew the silver was on the train? No one, he insisted. The cargo list wasn't public. Only the bank and the railroad office received copies. And the copies are where? Turner pointed at his desk inside. I walked back in. The cargo list was still there, pinned under a paperweight shaped like a horse. I studied it carefully. Silver bars listed under priority cargo. Weight noted, seal described, everything official. But then something odd caught my eye. The copy was creased, repeatedly, as if someone had folded and unfolded it many times. I lifted the paperweight. A faint smudge of black powder was under it. I rubbed it with my finger. Soot? No, it sparkled slightly in the light. Metal dust. I pocketed a bit of it inside a handkerchief. Turner swallowed hard. Detective, what does that mean? It means, I said, that someone touched this cargo list after you went home. He turned pale. But I lock this office every night. Locks don't stop people who know how to open them. I left the station office and stepped back into the dusty street. The smell of fresh bread mixed with the heat rising from the ground. A few merchants had opened their shops, but most people stayed on their porches, whispering among themselves. A young boy ran up to me, maybe 10 years old, freckles across his cheeks, breathing fast. Mr. Detective, Mr. Detective. I crouched down a bit. What is it, son? I saw something last night, near the ridge. What did you see? He gulped. A light, a bright one, like lightning, but blue, blue. That again. Clarence had mentioned a strange echo in the whistle. The sheriff said townsfolk heard a strange sound in the night. Now a boy claimed he saw blue light. Something about this heist wasn't normal. Not supernatural, but clever. Very clever. The boy continued, and I heard something else too. Something like metal scraping on metal. I gave him a small nod. You did good telling me. Go home now. He ran off, happy to have helped. I stood there thinking, blue light, metal scraping, no hoofprints, missing silver, a guard shot cleanly, a rope with burned metal residue, a drawn symbol left behind. Every piece was part of the same machine. Now needed to find the gears. Next, I headed to Miller's General Store, where folks often talked more than they bought. If someone had seen or heard anything suspicious in the last few days, it would have passed through here. The bell over the door jingled as I entered. Mr. Miller, tall, skinny, and always wearing a brown apron, smiled nervously. Detective Hale, I figured you'd come by sooner or later. Have you heard anything unusual lately? I asked. He scratched his chin. Well, now that you mention it, yes, I waited. There was a stranger in town yesterday, he said quietly. Tall man, long coat, didn't talk much, bought rope, matches, and a strange metal cylinder. That made my spine straighten. What kind of cylinder? I don't know, Miller said. Looked like something used by miners, but when I asked what he needed it for, he said, to signal what cannot be seen. Signal what cannot be seen. A cryptic answer, but it fit the atmosphere of the symbol and blue light. Did he say where he was going? I asked. Miller nodded. He rode south, toward the canyon trails. The canyon, a maze of rock walls that twisted for miles. Perfect for hiding, perfect for setting traps. Perfect for anyone who didn't want to be followed. I stepped out of the store, climbed onto my horse, and looked toward the rugged horizon. I turned to you, the one investigating all of this alongside me. This stranger is part of the truth, maybe the whole truth. Every clue is pointing us toward the canyons, and that's where we're heading next. Then additionally, if you're still with me, hit that like button and subscribe. The case is about to turn dangerous, and you don't want to miss what comes next. I pulled the reins, the horse neighed, and we headed straight into the sun toward the canyon where the last gunshot of the Wild West was waiting. The canyon trails were no place for the faint of heart. Sharp rocks, long shadows, wind that whispered through the stones like a living voice. But that morning, the canyon felt different, still, quiet, watching me. I gripped the reins tighter as my horse moved between the tall red walls of stone. The deeper we rode, the darker it became, even though the sun was shining high above. I wasn't alone out there. I could feel it. Someone had passed through recently. The sand was disturbed. A few plants were bent. A matchstick lay half buried near a cactus. And then I found the first real clue. A wooden sign nailed to a dead tree. The same symbol painted on it. The eye. The circle with the line. Big. Bold. Like a warning. Or an invitation. I dismounted and examined the sign closely. The paint was fresh, glistening under the heat. Whoever put it there did it recently, maybe even hours ago. Someone wanted me to keep going. Someone confident I would follow their trail. A few meters ahead, the canyon split in two. Left path or right path, both narrow, both dangerous. I crouched down and looked closely at the sand. And there it was, a small metallic shard buried in the dirt. Same reflective glitter I had found on the train. They were leading me. But why leave clues so obvious? A sloppy thief doesn't use symbols. A sloppy thief doesn't mislead a whole town. A sloppy thief doesn't orchestrate a heist where a train is stopped without witnesses. This heist was done by someone who wanted control, someone who expected to be followed, someone who had rehearsed this moment. I pocketed the shard and took the left path. The deeper I went, the colder the air became. Strange, considering how hot the desert normally stayed. The wind dropped. The silence lifted. Even the horse grew restless, stomping nervously. Then the canyon opened into a wide circular area known by locals as Echo Basin, named for the way sound bounced between the walls. A perfect place for a meeting or an ambush. I scanned the area carefully. Broken crates, footprints, rope marks, and a large patch of black soot on the ground, the same residue from the rope I had found inside the train. The thief had been here, no doubt about it, but he wasn't alone. Two sets of footprints moved around the soot, one heavy, one lighter, a struggle, or teamwork. I moved closer, kneeling to inspect the ground, when suddenly click, the unmistakable sound of a rifle's hammer being pulled back. Slowly, I raised my hands. "Easy," I said. "No need for that," a voice echoed behind me. "Drop your gun, detective." I recognized that tone. Shaky, fearful, trying to sound braver than it was. I turned slowly. It was Clarence Porter, the engineer of the train, the man who claimed he saw the last rider. His eyes were red, sleepless. His hands trembled around the rifle. "Clarence," I said calmly, "why are you pointing that thing at me?" You shouldn't be here," he stammered. "You should have stayed in town. You followed me here?" He swallowed hard. "You don't understand, Hale. You're walking into something you can't explain." I took a careful step forward. "There's nothing supernatural about this heist, Clarence. You know that." He shook his head violently. "I saw him. I saw the rider on top of the train. I saw him disappear." I kept my voice low. "What did you really see?" Clarence hesitated. And in hesitation, truth always breathes. "Talk to me, you insisty." He lowered the rifle slightly. I saw a shadow, a figure. The light was strange, blue, and the sound, like metal screeching, that matched the boy's description. "Clarence," I said softly, "did you come here alone?" He trembled again. "I followed the tracks. I thought maybe I could find something. But now." He looked around nervously. "We shouldn't stay here. Someone's watching." I scanned the canyon walls. No movement, no sound. But Clarence wasn't imagining his fear. Someone had been here before us. "Come on," I said, placing a hand on his shoulder. "We'll talk back in town." But before we could leave, a voice rang out. "You two sure walked a long way just to get lost." I spun around. A figure stood on a high ridge, hat pulled low over his eyes, a long dark coat blowing in the wind. The sun behind him hid his face completely. It was almost supernatural how he appeared. Almost. Clarence froze. "It's him," he whispered. "The rider." The figure lifted his arm. A gun glimmered. Time slowed. I grabbed Clarence and pulled him down just as a shot exploded through the canyon. Bang! The bullet hit a rock inches from my head. Clarence panicked. "He's real. He's real." "No, he's not," I said through gritted teeth. "He's a man and he wants us to believe he's a ghost." The figure fired again. Another shot rang out, echoing like thunder. But this one sounded wrong. Not like a normal gunshot. Hollow, metallic, artificial, a trick, a machine. The figure turned and ran along the ridge. I got up, dusted myself off, and pointed toward the trail. "Clarence, get back to town. Run." "What about you?" he cried. "I'm going after him." I didn't wait for his answer. I sprinted toward the opposite side of the basin, climbing up the rocks. The figure was too fast for someone carrying heavy gear, but he slipped, just slightly, leaving a trail of reflective metal glitter behind. A fingerprint, a signature, the same as on the train. Who was he? Why the theatrics? Why the symbols? Why the staged ghost act? Someone wanted to rewrite the legend of the last rider, and someone wanted to hide behind it. Halfway up the ridge, I stopped to catch my breath and looked back down into Echo Basin. No one followed. But I knew this wasn't over, not by a long shot. I turned to you because you're not just watching. You're my partner in this investigation. We're getting close, I whispered. He's slipping. And when he slips again, we'll catch him. Then, with a determined breath, if you're still with me, hit that like button and subscribe. The truth is getting louder, and you won't want to miss what comes next. I continued climbing, toward the shadow of the man who fired the last shot of the Wild West. Climbing that ridge felt like wrestling with the desert itself. Dust filled my boots, hot wind stung my eyes, and the rocks crumbled under my hands. But the figure ahead of me, that so-called last rider, kept leaving tiny clues. Scraped stones, metal glitter, footprints angled in a rush. He wasn't a ghost. He was human. He was scared, and scared criminals always make mistakes. I finally reached the top of the ridge. The desert opened wide in front of me, a sea of gold and red sand, stretching as far as the eye could see. For a moment, everything seemed still. Then I heard it. A faint, mechanical whirring. Not wind. Not an animal. Something. Turning. Something. Winding. I followed the sound toward a collection of rocks, shaped almost like a natural lean-to. Hidden behind it was a small campsite, but not the usual kind with a fire pit and food. This was different. This campsite was engineered. Metal gears. Coiled springs. A strange device the size of a canteen with a crank on its side. And next to it a coat. Black. Long. The one the rider wore. I lifted it. Heavy. Weighted with metal pieces sewn into the lining. To make movements dramatic. To make the silhouette stiff and ghost-like. To terrify anyone who saw it. Very clever. I turned the device in my hands, examining every edge. The crank showed signs of being used recently. The metal dust on it matched the glitter I had found at the train. Signal what cannot be seen. That cryptic phrase the storekeeper mentioned. And then it clicked. This device wasn't a weapon. It was an illusion machine. A machine to create sound. Echoes. Metallic whistles. Maybe even blue sparks if you knew how. The legend of the last rider, rebuilt through machinery. But the thief was nowhere nearby, or so I thought. A voice behind me froze my breath. You're smarter than the others, Detective Hale. I turned slowly. A man stood a few meters away, holding a revolver. He wasn't wearing the black coat anymore that was lying at my feet, but his hat, boots, and sharp stare told me everything. He was the rider, or at least, the man pretending to be him. He wasn't tall, but he carried himself like someone who thought he owned the desert. Thin beard, sharp jaw, a scar across the cheek, clothes dusty from a long night's work. But what stood out most was his confidence. Almost rehearsed. Put the gun down, I said calmly. He smiled slightly. You made it farther than I expected. Most folks hear the echoes, see the coat, and think death's riding toward them. He tilted his head. But you're not like most folks. You killed the guard, you diss. He shrugged. He wasn't supposed to fight back, but people do stupid things when they panic. And the silver? I asked. He pointed toward a rock formation behind him. Hidden. Safe. Ready for transport. I took a slow breath. You planned every detail. He nodded proudly. Took months. Studying the train's route, learning how sound bounces through the canyon, building that little machine you're holding. He gestured to the crank device. Even practiced disappearing on the train roof. You staged the ghost story, I said. I perfected it. He smiled. Fear bends people's reality, makes them blind. But not you, I answered. He nodded again. That's why you're here, and why you won't be leaving. He tightened his grip on the revolver. I had seconds. Nothing more. My eyes scanned the ground. Loose sand, stones, shadows, and there, just behind the rider, a rope hanging from a rock. The same rope with metal burn residue. Part of his escape plan. A plan I could use against him. I raised my hands. You think killing me will keep your secret? It kept it this far. And what happens when the next detective comes? Or the marshals? Or the army? You're smart, but not untrackable. He stepped closer. I'm smarter than all of them. That's where you're wrong, I whispered. I kicked a rock at the rope. Hard. The rock hit. The rope jerked. A weighted bag probably used to lift something earlier swung fast down the slope. The rider turned instinctively. I lunged. We crashed into each other. The revolver flew from his hand. The desert spun around us as we rolled down the rocks. Dust, heat, shouts, pain. He punched my ribs. I hit his jaw. We both scrambled to grab the revolver lying in the sand. He reached it first. I froze. But instead of firing, he laughed. "You're predictable, Hale." Then bang, a shot exploded. The sound echoed across the canyon like thunder. Except, it didn't come from his gun. The rider's eyes widened. "Another shot?" he whispered. "Who?" He turned and a figure stepped out from behind the rocks. Not a ghost, not a demon, a human. And when I saw who it was, everything about the heist finally made sense. Not magic, not legend. Human hands, human motive, human betrayal. But I won't spoil it here because now you have all the clues. Every step, every sound, every lie, every symbol, every detail since the beginning. They all point to one single person. I dusted myself off and looked directly at you, the investigator watching alongside me. You've seen everything I've seen. You've followed every clue. If you've connected the dots, then you know exactly who fired the last shot in the Wild West. I gave a small nod. And if you're ready for the truth, I pointed downward. The answer is waiting for you in the description. Then, with a firm voice, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe. It helps us bring more mysteries to the evidence room. The wind blew across the ridge, carrying away the dust and the secrets of the desert. But the truth stayed with you, waiting to be uncovered.